Afternoon, everybody. Welcome. This is second, I believe, Melwood's Catalyst for Inclusion series, entitled today, Disability, What Happens When You Turn 18? Now, a lot of parents are asking, and I've worked in schools in New York City for a long time, so it's always a question for the post-secondary, like what's gonna happen? And we're here to discuss that. This is gonna be a rich conversation, and in a little bit, I'll introduce Richard Soloway, who will tell you a little bit about the format of today, like what are we gonna talk about and what's next for us, the next steps. My name is Rebecca Cherokee. I'm the Chief Program Officer here at Melwood. What this means is really with a talented staff, we are able to provide a little over 20 programs focusing on making sure people with disabilities have the opportunities to live, work, and play in the community. So one of the strategic pieces for Melwood is to make sure people with disabilities are fully included in the workforce, and that's what we are here for. If you're not familiar with Melwood, Melwood began about 60 years ago, 1963, a group of parents who were concerned about their children with disabilities. Really, what happened when they are about to transition from high school to post-secondary? What happens after that, right? And this is a topic very relevant today. What happens to their children? How can they work and fulfill their lives? What can they do? So what they did with donated land from Andrews, we are of course from Andrews Air Force Base, they gave us about 7 acres of land. We were able to train, because we're about building skills for people with disabilities, train them. They were able to attain jobs. They were able to produce through horticulture. Still now, this is our name, horticulture. They grew plants, flowers, you name it. They were able to sell, but they were making something of their life, something that people thought people with disabilities impossible to do. So we've come a long way. Now, children, youth with disabilities and their parents are expecting even more. So it's not just that. They may want to do cybersecurity, construction, whatever it is, we want to open up the opportunities and give them the skill set, or to partner with folks in the community to make sure that they get to do whatever they choose to do, whatever they're good at. And that's what we're here for. And through that, we were able to build on what we're doing. We are an Ability One agency where we hire about 1,600 employees at Melwood, 1,000 of whom are people with disabilities on the workforce, making great money on the Ability One projects. We have about 60 contracts, federal contract around the DMV. So we are keeping folks busy. We are keeping them employed. They are participating in commerce. They are, part of society, and I love it. This is my joy. It puts a smile on my face knowing that people are working. We partner about 250 private companies where we provide jobs, whether it's from Lowe's to the nearby restaurant, and we encourage our audience, if you have a business or people with a business, they want to employ people with disabilities, we are more than happy to show them how, right? Because part of what we do, we educate our partners about how to do that. And that's part of the post-secondary plan also, because a lot of people are hesitant in hiring people with disabilities because they think they can't do the job. In fact, give them the chance and we'll show you how to do this. So please feel welcome to contact us for something like this. We'll be more than happy. We have partnered and have delivered not just jobs, we have a summer camp, we have a huge department here at, for Melwood, we focus on play, work, anything that's positive to make positive move for people with disabilities. Before I start running my mouth, because I get all passionate about this, I want to make sure that I introduce Richard Soloway, Melwood's Donor Development and Membership Marketing Manager. He'll be able to give you a little bit of an idea of what the format's going to be like today. Richard, you want to take it away?
Great, thank you, Rebecca, and welcome everybody. So good to see new and returning faces. Good to meet you, or welcome back. As Rebecca mentioned, we had a great event last month about the reopening of schools and summer camps. I know that some of the people who attended that are with us again today, so welcome back. But if you were not able to make that event, we would be happy to share a link to the recording. So let us know in the chat box, and I would be happy to send that link to you after the event. The purpose of these events is for you to get to know Melwood's programs and for us to get to know you. So to continue the conversation after the event today, I'll be calling everyone to get your feedback and advice on how we can make these events most useful for you. This, as you know, is a free event, and we are not going to be asking for a donation today, but we are going to be running a live online fundraising event in June called the Enriching Lives Breakfast. Because although, as Rebecca mentioned, Melwood is helping thousands of people with disabilities to transform their own lives, all of our programs could get bigger with more funding. So you will receive an invite to that fundraising event, and you will be encouraged to invite your friends. If you come to that, you are not required to donate to attend the event, but we will be seeking to inspire you to give, and there will be options to support at a level that's meaningful for you if you're ready to do that at that event, or to not give at all if you're not ready, just to hear about our programs. And I can tell you more about that when I call you after the event today. And with that, let's get on with our presentation for today.
Thank you so much, Richard. I just gave an overview about Melwood, but to be very specific, Melwood, we talked about the Ability One project, and then you have the human service side of Melwood. We serve about 2,500 people with disabilities in the community. We began by giving them the opportunity to support them, whether it's a day program, whether it's at home. We provide services in home, in the community. We knock on doors while we're in the community to look for jobs for them, to even do whatever they want to do. So that's the community service piece for Melwood. Then we provide career exploration and development. Exploration is in high school, right? The transitioning age. And then the development is post-high school. That's that time between the 12th grade and what happens next. We develop them to make sure that, develop soft skills, develop hard skills like a training, whether it's in technical, cybersecurity, construction, whatever they want to do. We partner with people in the community to be able to deliver that. And through that, we are able to provide some employment support services, right? I don't want to say so much supported employment, but the role is really to support people in the onsets of their job to make sure when they begin and have a successful beginning, they can actually do well, right? Retention would be really good. And we help them mitigate some social obstacles. So it could be from babysitting, from housing. I say if a kid is hungry, the kid is not staying in school because we got to figure out how to get them food. So if they are homeless, how do they get to work? How do they shower? So we help them mitigate all those things. And we've done this with our partners, whether it's the Alexandria Arlington Regional Workforce Council, and David's going to talk a little bit more about that, whether it's DOORS in Maryland, CSM, MITRE, Sideberry. We have so many partners to make sure that we're not doing this by ourselves. It is a community call, and we want to make sure that people come together to solve these issues. And then lastly, we want to be able to talk about career paths, right? To do that, I'd like to introduce a wonderful panel of speakers. Thank you for joining us. And I want to make sure the conversation is rich. Like we said, please, the chat box, add comments, questions. Kirsten is going to help me manage all that. And if I'm missing something, she'll interject and add more stuff. And our guests will also add links, or Kirsten will add links, resources. And post event, Richard will follow up with all the links or resources that we need. So please feel welcome to chat and let us know what you need. I'd like to first introduce Natalie. Natalie Mitchell is a program manager from the Division of Rehabilitation Services, Maryland State Department of Education, better known as DOORS, our partners. Thank you so much, Natalie, for joining us. We appreciate you being here. And David Remick is the Executive Director for Alexandria Arlington Regional Workforce Council. David has been a crucial partner. We talk from onset of most of our program. We try to pick his brain, like, how do we do this? And making sure that we talk to our partners, before, during, and after. We evaluate our program. If something is not working, we welcome feedback to say maybe how we can improve. So that's something that we want to be able to provide to you. And Elizabeth Foster, my colleague here, is the Director of Career Exploration and Development at Melwood. She will also talk about, she focuses on this. This is her baby, like what happens next. This is what she does here at Melwood. And she'll talk a little bit more about that 18, what happened when you turn 18. To start, are you guys ready? Pretty good. To all of you, right? Let's talk about, in your professional experience and expertise, what are the program and services available to students with disabilities from K to 12? And what happened when they reach 18? I'm going to start with Liz, and then she's going to add the resources of our partners to make sure that we have the right answer for you. Liz, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you very much. I have a 40-year career in education and nonprofits. And the reason I came back to Melwood was because I understood that the things that were happening in schools were not translating to after school. So generally speaking, the programs and services in K-12 are driven by an IEP or 504 plan. And while you're in school, you are offered a continuum of services, meaning you have a variety of services in a variety of settings that are determined by that IEP team. This is really important because that IEP team drives the goals and objectives for the student. Those programs and services assist students to achieve their goals. So while they're in school, they have many goals, and we will be focusing a little bit about, what our transition service is. What's most important and what's driving this conversation is that while people are in school, students with disabilities are entitled to a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Entitled, meaning anybody who qualifies receives. When they leave high school, not necessarily at 18, but you get the idea, this is a cliff because everything is driven by eligibility. There's no entitlements anymore. And this is a huge issue because what folks don't seem to understand, for the majority of the folks don't understand, is that adult services equals eligibility. Parents must do their due diligence in researching and advocating for their child. You want to make sure that you're getting all the benefits that are afforded to you while they're in school so that their transition is as smooth as possible. And Natalie will talk a lot about that. But school systems do offer a variety of transition fairs and workshops and meetings so that you can understand as a parent what's available. You have to start attending those meetings when they're in 9th grade. You can't wait till the 12th grade year because with eligibility come waiting lists. And sometimes those waiting lists are pretty darn long. But Melwood and other providers, we're here to help you. We're here to help answer your questions and provide information that makes the transition much more easy. So that's my answer to the question number 1, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm gonna allow Natalie to speak next, but one of the things that parents are hesitant in getting those services, not understanding that they are entitled, like it's there. We also got to think about the stigma that comes with disability, right? It's better to get help ahead of time rather than wait last minute. So we really encourage you to be able to do that. Natalie, I'd like to give you the floor.
Well, I'm going to echo a lot of what Liz has said here about the first question, what services are provided in school. So as she said, everything's sort of driven by the IEP. You know, if you have a 504 plan, all of that. And of course, you're entitled to those services. So the school is, you know, pretty much going to, you know, determine whether or not you need those services, and they must, you know, provide those services to you. Of course, what happens when you turn 18 or you leave high school, then it's all driven by eligibility. And so so you have to, you know, you have to qualify for the services. And sometimes, you know, those services aren't necessarily guaranteed, but, you know, you do have to do that. You have to, you know, at this point, it's in the hands of the student, and, you know, hopefully the student's parents can assist with seeking out some of those services. And one of the, you know, I guess one of the issues is the fact that, you know, a lot of those services are, it's kind of hard to figure out where to go, who to seek services from, and it can be kind of cumbersome sort of navigating the system. And so you know, that's one of the biggest differences moving from high school out into the world of work or post-secondary education.
Thank you, Natalie. I think one of the things that I want to emphasize, to somebody just send a direct message to me, what about for kids who are 18, right? 18, we talk about they have to be qualified for the service, right? Post high school. So not so much, you know, that's how you want to do it. Like Liz said beforehand, we got to be very proactive to make sure that's done. And then one of the things is, you know, the question or comment was, I pulled my child out of school because the school was not following the IEP. You reserve the right to make sure that that's done. If not, providers like Melwood will be a voice with you, not for you, but with you. We will help you advocate. So it's very important to be able to make some noise, right? To get what your child needs. So very important. Thank you so much, Natalie. And David, would you like to comment?
Sure. So the way I look at this conversation from my perspective is what happens to an individual with disabilities, you know, when they hit 18 after they leave school, and what services are available to them. So that's the way I took the conversation. And so here today, I'm here to represent the American Job Centers, which there are a variety of services available at these American Job Centers for 18-year-olds with all abilities. An American Job Center is an office or a building that contains many publicly funded workforce development services, which are all under one roof. Young people with disabilities have the same opportunities as any other job seeker at any American Job Center, and those opportunities are integrated into all of our programs. Let me just tell you about some of the services available at the American Job Centers. We have computers and internet and copiers and scanners, and we still have fax machines. I don't know why, but we still do. We have resume building software and, you know, all the Microsoft Office products. People can do job searches and they can post their resumes on the various job boards that we have at our centers. We have on-site and now, because of COVID, virtual hiring events and job fairs. We have career counseling and assessments and tuition to pay for training services. We have, you know, these employment services for everybody, but in particular, we have specialized employment services for veterans, for adults and youth that experience barriers to employment, for older workers, and yes, for people with disabilities. We also have access to English for speakers of other languages, or as I guess I'm talking old school, ESL classes. So we have access to that. And all of these services, again, offer accommodations and assistance for people living with disabilities. So, you know, we help to connect the job seekers with the other resources as well. like vocational rehabilitation. And as Natalie mentioned, it's an individualized employment program. And in Virginia, it's implemented through the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. Natalie just mentioned Maryland Division of Rehabilitation Services. And in DC, it's the Department on Disability Services. And we can enroll a person in our services at the American Job Center while they are taking those other organizations' services as well, so that they receive all of the opportunities available to them. I just want to make a note that in Virginia, and I don't know if it's the same way in DC or Maryland, in Virginia, the American Job Centers, most of them have ticket to work programs for individuals receiving Social Security disability benefits who are not working with vocational rehabilitation. And we again co-enroll those ticket to work participants in our other AJC services. For those of you who don't know what ticket to work is, it's another type of employment program where we provide assistance to creating employment goals, developing resumes and cover letters. And these are all targeted to people with disabilities that are receiving the SSDI. We provide instruction how to identify and apply for job leads, help preparing for interviews and interacting with employers. We provide ongoing help once the individual gets the job. We help with provide assistance identifying and requesting workplace accommodations. And we provide an understanding of the impact of earnings on Social Security disability benefits and how to report those earnings to Social Security agencies. So there are a lot of services that we have for those that are 18 plus at the American Job Centers, and there are American Job Centers all over the greater Washington region. In Arlington, it's the the Arlington Employment Center. In Alexandria, it's the Alexandria Workforce Development Center. If you're not living in Alexandria City or Arlington County, I would suggest going to careeronestop.org to find your local American Job Center in suburban Maryland and DC.
Thank you, David. I think one of the things as you were talking, do people have to qualify for those services, or is it just anybody? I wanted to make sure we emphasize on that because we talked about people have to qualify for service.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And so yes and no. So we have what's called basic career services that are open to everybody with no eligibility. And those are uses of our computer labs and all the tools and services that we have there, a lot of self-driven type programs. For Ticket to Work, you have to have SSDI or receiving SSDI to get into that program. For the programs where we provide tuition for job training, there is some eligibility there. Know that, people with disabilities are, that's one of the criteria, to get into these programs. So more often than not, shall I say, people qualify for these programs. Now, we have limited number of staff, little number of money, and so it's not like we can serve 1 billion people in one shot. But all the American Job Centers in the greater Washington region are available to support those individuals that are 18 plus, living with all abilities.
And like David mentioned, Career One Stop, because it's really, each region has a different name. For Prince George's is Employ Prince George's County. It's different names, but it's the same service. Make sure in whatever area that you are, get the information, or you can ask Melwood. We can support you and help you answer those questions. Ticket to Work is with Social Security Administration. We do have it here. We provide this at Melwood also. It's as an employer networker. So it's in Maryland. They have it in all states and DC. So you have to be a beneficiary, and we will be able to, if we can support you, we will get a partner like David to say, we can't do this, right? We may not be able to do what you're asking us to do and be able to give you the resources out there to get what you need. And thank you, David, for your answer. And now I'd like to get into Natalie. I'd like to ask you, What are the challenges faced by youth with disabilities and their parents in accessing support post-high school graduation? Have you noticed any that, or have you seen any changes over the years?
So, so I've been in VR for a very long time. I do want to backtrack and say that one of the services that's provided by doors for students that are in school starting at age 14 is the pre-employment transition services that are available. And so those services include job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, and opportunities on counseling about enrollment in post-secondary education programs, work readiness training to develop social skills and independent living skills, and also instruction in self-advocacy. So those are some of the services that DOORS provides to young people starting at age 14. Now you have to be a student with a disability in school, and you need in order to receive those services, you need an IEP, a 504, you just need to present that, or a medical documentation. But you do have to be in school, and those services are available actually up until the age of 22. So I just wanted to say that. And so again, some of the challenges are that I've seen is just the trying to negotiate what services, finding out what services you need, making sure that everyone that needs to be involved in the transition is involved, starting early enough to make sure that you identify a goal and the services that you're going to need. Those are some of the, the challenges. But the biggest challenge is, I think parents and students need to have a continuous discussion about the transition and who to involve, what agencies to involve. Of course, DOORS is a great agency, and they will definitely be referred to DOORS for services. But there needs to be a continual conversation about how to get the most out of the agencies, how to access those services that you need. And one of the biggest things that we offer that I think is so key, a couple of things: work-based learning experience, which is like a sort of an evidence-based thing, getting work experience while you're in school prior to transitioning is like critical, and also those self-advocacy skills, because you're going to need to advocate for yourself once you leave high school. Again, that transition from entitlement to eligibility.
Natalie, would DOORS be the one connecting? Let's say I'm a parent and I don't have an agency to work with, and I go to DOORS. Would they connect me with somebody depending on my needs? How does it work?
So you would, more than likely, a parent can refer the school. Usually, a lot of times refers the student. So the referrals received, and and an application appointment is scheduled, and from there we have to determine whether you're if you're going for VR services, which you can do now starting at age 14. If you're going for VR services, then we have to determine your eligibility. So we're going to look for medical documentation, and that there again is where that's sort of an adult thing. So we're asking you to bring in your medical documentation or whatever it is we need to determine your eligibility. For pre-ETS is a little different. You just need some, a documentation basically saying, okay, I'm a student and I have a disability. But again, there's that. And so then after that, if you're determined eligible for DOORS services, then we would start the plan. And so each plan is individualized. So we would first, if we're looking at VR services, vocational rehabilitation services, where the goal is to find employment, then we would identify an employment goal and what services you may need. And we will also, you work with your counselor. If there are other linkages that you need, we will look at that and see what we can do to provide those linkages.
Great, thank you. And now I want to emphasize on the fact that the whole change in terms of an IEP process could be very confusing for parents. So now I'd like Liz to talk a little bit about the IEP process. Sometimes it attempts to prepare students for what's next, transitioning from K-12 into post-secondary. So how does that work, Liz?
That's a really good question. But before I answer that, I just want to remind folks, because I did look at the participation list. There's some people on here across the country. In every state, there are local agencies and offices that are being described by both David and Natalie. So I got a phone call the other day from New Jersey from a parent, and they were looking for some advice. So those referrals can be made. So looking at transition, there is a requirement that every single student have a transition plan while they're in high school. These transition activities start at 14. What you need to do as a parent is to bring you and your child to these meetings, because otherwise people sit around a table and they kind of talk and they don't really know what you really want unless you're speaking up. These services are described in a goal, like when I graduate, I want to do this. When I move away from my home, I want to have my own apartment. These kind of activities, this is where it becomes really important to have somebody like David or Natalie around the table to kind of aim people in the right direction. This is what you do to get this service. For example, Natalie was talking about work-based learning experiences. If you want a work-based learning experience under pre-EDS, that's not an issue or problem. That can be included in that transition plan, and then the results from that experience can be talked about the next year. It helps people determine what they want and how they want to get there. Providers like Melwood, we can be invited to transition meetings. We can be a great help in navigating the system. We don't just say that it's just Melwood that can give you a service, but we can help, get you aimed in the right direction. Additionally, providers are invited to those transition meetings that happen in schools so that you can start seeing a variety of services from a variety of providers delivered in a variety of ways and kind of pick what works for you. That being said, Natalie made a great point. Decide what kind of service you think you need early. Collect and keep all your assessment and service documents, such as your 504, your IEP, your psychological assessment. Keep all those documents and make sure they're from the last 5 years, because these are going to be necessary to get those eligibility requirements out of the way. One eligibility that you can take care of at 18 is applying for Social Security. If you apply before 18, they look at the income from the whole family. But if you apply at 18 or older, they're just looking at the person with disabilities. So it's really important that you go ahead and get that out of the way as soon as possible. And I hope that answers some of the questions. If you have any more questions on that, I'd be glad to help you.
I think one of the things in you speaking, Liz, I'm thinking about choice, person-centered, right? Don't allow the system to make the decision, be very involved, right? And have conversations. It's okay to ask questions. I would say the least someone can tell you is no, but at least you know you've asked. With that, can you talk about pathways available to young folks with disabilities? Is there anything they can do? Are they covered by law? So can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a broad question, thanks. No. So we really want you to contact us before graduation. Those pathways are very important. And there's so many directions you can take, but an informed decision is most important. So you have to kind of look at the services and find a really good fit. In some circumstances, providers can actually start delivering services during the senior year so they can get a taste of what's out there. So I'm going to look at from a broad perspective, and then I'm going to bring it down with specific examples, and I hope that helps. But college, of course, is available for students who are getting a regular standard diploma. This is important because Natalie actually has some services. The Division of Rehabilitation Services have some services and have some counseling available to kind of help you choose the right direction and choose the right school. This is really important. Internships and externships. Melwood offers several choices, paid and unpaid experiences. It's almost like a work-based learning experience. So you get a chance to do your job or practice a job and get that whole experience in before you go into full employment. This, however, mostly requires degrees and or experience, but we've been able to make some inroads with some employers to kind of give some people some chances that might not have all those qualifications. Apprenticeships, each state drives their own apprenticeship program, and each state is different. And I know David can definitely talk to a little bit about that. But all the programs require a multi-year commitment. And that's not only from the employer, but it's from the student. Employment, Rebecca mentioned we've got lots of employment opportunities at Melwood, but there's varying degrees of how that can happen. Sometimes it's just doing an assessment. Sometimes it's really training. Maybe you just need help searching for something and getting placement. Maybe you need coaching for the first 2 weeks, but everything can be funded depending on where you're eligible. And that's where it gets a little yes and a little bit of no. It really does depend on that eligibility. We have kind of driven down a different road. We understand that there are a lot of different careers and a lot of careers where there's a lot of growth. And so we've tried to provide some specific training that we kind of developed to address folks who maybe not thought about of going into cybersecurity or computer as a degree or a career experience. So we have career pathway specific services. So say you're interested in IT and computer, we've got a Bill IT. And that combines soft skill training with certifications. We also have done that with construction. And in this case, I've worked with some partners to kind of think about, well, what about our fellows and gals that don't have a diploma, standard diploma? Can we do a designer program? And so with our partners, we found a solution to that. So it's really important to kind of look around and see what's available. And then, if you're working with Melwood and say, hey, my child's really interested in culinary arts. Are you going to do something in that area? We can say, sure, we'll figure that out. So we, as with all providers, we are able to develop some really innovative services based on what people say they want and what people say they need. So it's important to shop. Does that help? I hope so.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. I think it's important, and Natalie, I think you want to speak because you're unmuted. As Liz mentioned, it's important to know that some career path requires a high school diploma, but we can help you work through your pathways, right? To start, it doesn't mean that your pathway to the workforce you have to have a high school diploma. There are ways, and we can help you navigate systems to be able to do that. I think my question my last question to our panelists would be to David. Do you need any paperwork to go to come to you? What do I need? If I'm a young person with disabilities, do I bring disability paperwork? How does it work?
So, the American Job Centers are public workforce entities. And so with that, we love our bureaucracy just like everybody else. And so, the best way of doing it is to bring, your various forms of identification, the identification that are the forms that identify who you are, the forms that disclose the types of disabilities you might have, the forms that might disclose that type of income that you might be having, things of that nature. Every program has different eligibility requirements, so that's just different types of forms. And so the process would be, as you go through our intake or the intake from the different job centers across the Greater Washington region, they'll be asking questions, you'll be providing information, and that intake session might take a few days because they might say, can you bring in proof of X, Y, and Z? And once you bring that proof in, then that's the green light for you to move forward. But we do try to get people to bring as much as they can in with them ahead of time so that we can speed up the process.
Thank you. I had to ask because Natalie, everybody was talking about what paperwork and want to make sure that people understood the process.
Yep.
I do want to say though, for doors eligibility, we would like for you to bring in medical documentation. However, it is on doors to get that documentation if you don't have it. But if you do have it, it does speed up the process of determining your eligibility. I just wanted to say that, just so that folks didn't think, oh, well, I can't come to doors unless I have eligibility documentation. This is for the VR program. So yes, it would be great to have it, but if for some reason you don't have it, please don't let that stop you from coming to doors. We will figure it out.
Natalie said it better than I. Take everything that she said for doors and put American Job Centers, and that applies as well.
And I saw in the chat box, somebody said, what's the equivalent to doors? It's doors in Virginia or say in DC. It's called different things, but in terms of service, you have it in all your local or state. You just got to figure out what it is exactly. And I thank you, Kirsten, for actually putting those links on the side. And now would like to-
and Rebecca, I would say, look at your local departments of social services as well. And so while we have these great organizations like the one that Natalie represents and the one that's in DC and the one that's in Virginia, we also have social service providers all over the place, and they have programs as well.
Yes, indeed. Somebody asked the question, we're going to get into the questions on the side. How do you know that you enrolled in doors, Natalie? How would I know? So
if you've been referred by the school, the parents should have signed something saying that it's okay to send a referral to doors, but we would send in, if I'm understanding the question, we would send in application information. We would contact you once the referral is received.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the person can welcome to have a follow-up question or comment for you if it's not clear. When we refer to SSI, David, somebody asks, are you referring to supplementary security income, SSDI, SSI?
Social Security Disability Income.
Yeah.
SSDI.
So one of the things that we also have is my son has severe behaviors. What services are available for him? His current placement requests an IEP, not his annual, in the next 2 weeks. Liz, would you like to take this question?
So as a provider, we provide services to everybody with a disability, whether they have a behavior issue or not. So if you need some assistance, we'd be glad to assist you in that process, maybe give you some advice on how to advocate, but absolutely, just reach out and our contact information can be shared.
What about individuals that cannot make decisions for themselves once they turn 18 for their guardian, and what options do they have? I get this a lot because a lot of time parents are like, I'm making the decision, right? And I would ask for guardianship paperwork or something from the court because the person may not be able to make decisions, right? You have to be able as a caregiver to collaborate and making sure that we want to allow people with disability to make their choice, right? So it's not coming from parents. The good thing about this is when they make the decision, they have a voice. That's part of self-advocacy. And I had a parent where the child said, you know, I love to eat. I'd like to work in a restaurant. So got her a job in a restaurant, you know, washing dishes and cooking, right? She likes to eat, she said. I want to eat. I don't want to cook. And that works for me because I don't know how to cook. I like to eat. So maybe tasting food or something of this sort. I didn't tell you. So you have to be very, you have to understand what they're asking you for. That's why we make it very person-centered. But it becomes a legal issue, right? And depending on a provider, depending on who, if you go to David, you know, they may say the person is an adult. They have to make the decision. DOORS may say the same thing. But most of people in the system understand that caregivers are there to support the person. We would actually have conversations about that, if that answers your question. So I think we put in some information about doors and doors. One of the things is, what if you are a doors client? How do you know you are getting the service that you are qualified for? Natalie.
So as I mentioned, each case, each person that we work with it's an individualized service. So again, you're working with a professional, a counselor who's going to work with you to determine your you know, employment goal, and the employment goal drives the services. So it may need that, maybe that if you're not clear, then you might need to have a, you know, a conversation with the counselor. And please advocate for your son or daughter if you feel like there are some services that that he or she may require, and you don't see those listed on the plan. So it's always an open conversation. You can have one plan, you can have several plans. Plans can change because that's what happens. I mean, folks, you know, they get older, they may want to do something at age 18 or maybe at 15, they said they wanted to do this, and things change, and DOORS is flexible. We will make changes, and we definitely welcome input from caregivers, folks that are working with the students.
And they reserve the right to change their plans like anybody else, right?
Yes, yes.
You know, it's a great.
I think that's happened for all of us.
All of us. Like, that's not what we want. So we want to be able to help them through the process.
Right.
I have a question. Does home address affect whether or not someone is eligible for Melwood assistance? And that's for Liz. Who do we serve in DC, Virginia, Maryland, even county specific?
So that's a really good question. Actually, Melwood can deliver services to anybody in Maryland, anybody in Virginia, and anybody in DC who receives vocational rehab services. We also can provide direct services in Maryland and Virginia for some of our other services. So that being said, we've got to get more specifics, and we can figure it out. And I also saw the question about private pay. That is also an option. So we kind of do it a little bit on both sides of the river and in between.
A question here. Thank you, Liz. Where do high school students start in Maryland? My son is 17. What do I do? Natalie, can you touch on that in terms of door services? And David, I'll give it to you. Please be mindful of the age. It's 17. Natalie?
So if the student is 17, they can apply for pre-employment transition services. They can apply for VR services right now. You know, I talk with, you can talk with your transitioning teacher, or you can call doors directly.
David, 17-year-old?
So we're talking 17-year-old that's still in school?
Yes.
Oh yeah, still in school. Well, even if you're out of school for doors, I want to say.
Yes, 17.
And so, yeah, I'm not 100% on this because we don't deal with people that are still in school regardless of their ability. But I believe you start having that conversation not only with the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services, but you also want to engage your local departments of social services. So in Arlington, the Arlington Department of Human Services, Alexandria City, the Alexandria City for Community and Human Services, and then Fairfax. I don't remember the name of that particular entity. Mm-hmm. Obviously, all these things are Googleable, but I would, when you hit 17, I would start the process of trying to figure those things out. Also, I would expect that some of the coordinators in the school probably have information to share in that regard as well.
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize on 17 so somebody doesn't show up on your door and say, well, you said I can come in, right? So I wanted to make sure folks understood what's needed in what age to come.
And I do want to say, I said that you can come in, and obviously we welcome everybody. But if you live in Maryland, I would suggest you go and visit American Job Center in Maryland. We all get funding that is based on our locality, our own jurisdictional base. And so while I have served people that are not in Arlington or Alexandria, my preference would be that, the American Job Centers serve, you go to your local one and not go across the river.
Thank you.
Nothing personal.
Yeah, all love. My daughter is graduating, and is there virtual job training available for her since things are closed?
I'll just jump in and say, yeah, there are a ton of virtual providers out there right now, a ton. And a lot of them are really, really good. You can access them by, Googling them. You can also do a Google search for eligible training provider list and the state that you happen to be a part of. And that will tell you which training providers are funded through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity, which is one of the main funding streams through American Job Centers. But there are a large number of providers out there that were physical that have moved to the virtual space and are thriving. And so, and the occupations that those providers support are myriad. So they're out there. Just do Google search and you'll see.
Thank you, David. And we do provide virtual services here at Melwood. And someone said, should I contact my Melwood because my child is still in high school? Please do. Like I said, ask questions, let them say, let people say no to you, right? I would still ask. Please use the link, call our numbers, and contact, email, however you want to connect with us. So I think we have so many questions. What I'm going to do now is making sure that as we follow up with people, this is such a great conversation. I call it juicy conversation. I love it. But there's so many questions. We will follow up with you. Now, I'd like to invite Richard to come back and to talk about next steps before I speak a little and close out on the event. Richard?
Yes, thank you again, everybody, for coming today. One of the things that's been referenced a lot during today's meeting is obviously limits on capacity, how many people that we can serve. at Melwood and obviously at the agency we have here as our guest. For Melwood, we would like to add more scale to our programs by receiving more funding. And although this event is not a fundraiser, as I mentioned, we are holding a fundraiser in June to which everybody here is invited. And we would also like you to help us to bring more people to these events, which are the introduction to Melwood, so we can both tell people more about information that might be useful to them, and then also ask them to consider being supporters as well. And again, I will be calling everybody who's on our call today to get your feedback, get your advice on how we can make these sessions more useful to you, and to invite you to our fundraising event and to ask for your help to bring more people into that no pressure event where we will be seeking to inspire people to support. So I hope to speak to you very soon.
And I want to make sure, since we're talking, thank you so much, Richard, for that. Since we're talking about workforce, I want to give a shout out to the HR department here. Please, we have jobs available. Post 18, please apply for those jobs. Whether it's for camp, whether it's for the Ability One project, gain transferable skills here, and you can take it anywhere. So I welcome for you to go and visit us, melwood.org, to make sure that you get the information and apply for these jobs. As we're closing out, I'd like to focus on the fact that last year we celebrated our 30th year anniversary for the American with Disability Act. And it's very important to mention that the ADA is a landmark civil rights law. It focused in the beginning, it enshrines in rights and accessibility, non-discrimination of people with disabilities. Now we are beyond that. We want to expand on that. It's not just giving people just a bare minimum. We talk about full inclusion, right? So we want to be able to imagine and dream a world where people with disabilities are fully included. It is Melwood's vision. And I want to be able to bring that up and say that this is the core of what this discussion is about. As you're transitioning from that 18, the world is yours. Just making sure that we can help people dream. We can help them and open up some doors for folks and opportunities. And with that, great people in this field, whether it's David, Natalie, Liz has been doing this forever too. I want to make sure that we keep this conversation, we keep talking about that, and making this world, making it possible for folks with disabilities, and use our expertise to be able to get the information and educate folks. I thank you so much, all three of you, for participating and for being able to bear with me. I'm passionate about what I do. People will tell you that I get all giddy up. Thank you so much. This event, as mentioned before, it was recorded, so we will keep a copy for you. It's going to be uploaded, I believe, on the website in the next few days. You'll be able to have access to it. And I want to make sure, to mention that the new normal for us is COVID. Please stay safe. I feel like I'm hiding. I've been hiding for the past year. Keep yourself safe. Use virtual stuff, Zoom, call us, email us. We're here for you. Thank you so much. And I'd like to close out with Kirsten. Is there anything for us, Kirsten?
No, just thank you everyone very much for your time. We appreciate your comments and questions and feedback. And we'll be following up with all these really great resources, links, and a recording to this video if you'd like to share with anyone. So enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.